Here we go. Okay, just get some water.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar with dbSEABED today. We'll wait a few minutes while everyone is signing on.
How many people did we have on the first meeting, Gustav?
44.
Good. Good.
I think something like that. It's a good turnout.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I am Gustav Kegesten. I'm the Science Director of HubOcean. I will give you a little bit of an introduction a bit later in this webinar today about who we are and what we do. And we have Chris Jenkins here from dbSEABED, which I think many of you know from before. And we just figured out that you started this work when I was 10, Chris.
yes, probably. Well, the world's a big place. Still a big place. Yep.
I guess since we were pushing time a bit, Chris, we might as well get started.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so warm welcome to everyone. I see actually quite a lot of good old friends in the participant list that have joined. It's great to see you all today. We're gonna go through the latest global seafloor substrate maps that Chris had brought to this world and that we have on the platform now. And we will cover today essentially about 20 minutes presentation about the dbSEABED work and everything that has gone into creating those maps. Then I will do a presentation about HubOcean, who we are, and hopefully keep that quite short. And then we'll go over to a live demo of the platform and get to see what the dbSEABED data looks like on the platform and what else you can do there. And then we will have a little quick poll and a question and answer session in the end. And you're very welcome to post questions in the chat. You know, anything you think of, and you can also present yourself, make comments, and so on. We are encouraging an active session, but we'll save the questions verbally discussions to the end to ensure we get through everything. And with that, I hand over to you, Chris.
All right, thanks, Gustav. So, yeah, good evening, good morning, everybody. So dbSEABED has been around for a long time. It's just been growing and growing. It's now reached over 6 million observations of what the seabed's made of. So the collaboration we have with HubOcean is a very welcome one for me because it's reaching out to all sorts of people who can use this data. And, you know, one of the things that joins dbSEABED with HubOcean is the quest to make the management of the ocean more sensible, more knowledgeable, you know, and to really help the ocean management side. And we're quite at ease using technologies to do that. So technologies may actually come to the rescue. So let me start out the presentation that I wanted to show, and it's going to, hold on, it's going to start with a lovely view of the ocean bottom. Actually, yeah, here we go. So, yeah, and dbSEABED is essentially a research-oriented structure. It started out in universities, but you know, it's the most beneficial uses of it are going to be in partnerships with industry and with agencies. So so that's our position here. The The first slide gives you the grand overview. 6 million observational sites. Not all of them are to do with seabed texture. Some of them, for instance, are on strength or the amount of manganese, or we get quite abstract parameters sometimes. But the major mappings are in terms of seabed texture, seabed color, composition, and strength. This map shows the distribution of the current data, of the present data, and red is gravel, yellow is sand, green is mud, and purple is rock. And you can see some familiar features here. There's the ocean spreading ridges. You can see some of the platforms like the North Sea and the Florida platforms. So you'll see familiar features here, but the difference is that we're mapping what the materials are made of at the bottom. So all sorts of different observations comprise this data set. And I'm going to focus on a couple of themes just in this short talk. One of them is that we really want to get an unbiased view of the seabed. If we were to just use geological corers or geological samplers, we would end up with quite a biased view of the seabed. For instance, no boulders, no reefs, no rock platforms. So we have to use different observation platforms like video, divers, AUV, as well as the geological tools, and also electronic probes. So one of the key themes in dbSEABED is to get the least biased view of the seabed in all the zones, from the inshore, which is actually where most of this data comes from, and then going right out to the deep sea. Now that was a global map. What is the data density like when we come inshore? And dbSEABED has really concentrated on filling in the inshore areas, the shallow marine areas, and even up to the shoreline. And you can see here an example from Bass Strait in southern Australia, Tasmania up to the top left. And you can see the blue dots are showing the positions of actual observations. You see there are many along the shoreline, which is right, because that's where the major human influence is, and that's probably where we can do the most good to in stewardship for the ocean. You can see that the data density varies quite a lot. So on the platform here, there's a fair sprinkling of data. But when you come out into the deep Tasman Sea, there's almost nothing out there, right? So one of the functions of dbSEABED is it is possible to identify the gaps in our knowledge and then direct the ships and the scientists to those areas. Now, dbSEABED does go into the sub-bottom. I mean, most of our work is really on the superficial seabed, but we have had projects, for instance, in the Gulf of Mexico or in the North Sea, where we've tackled intensive coring data sets. And we also, by the way, import all the ocean drilling data and a lot of core data from Pangaea. So the other theme on this slide is probably the section of my talk, which is the take-home section, the red text. So the leading features of the system. Well, first of all, it's large, and it's going to need to be to cover all the world oceans. 6 million observations from geology, biology, engineering, safe navigation, defense, all these different segments of ocean mapping. They have contributed data into dbSEABED. And again, that's what helps us get the most unbiased view of the seabed. Now, a second theme that's really important is that the main outputs are numerical with units attached. So they're in engineering units. And this is something that sets dbSEABED aside from many other databases about the seabed. We really want to interface with process models. We really want to supply information, numeric information that those models can pick up and put into physics equations or engineering equations. So this is how dbSEABED started. Actually, it was as a preparer of data to go into acoustic numerical models. That being said, we actually love word-based data. So word-based data, you could not achieve a world mapping of the ocean substrates without word-based data. It would be impossible to do it from just analytical numerical data. 85% of our data is word-based, and you'll get an idea that that increases our coverage. It's particularly important when you go into some zones like volcanic zones or inshore, or if you're dealing in biological habitats, the word-based data is particularly important in those zones. So the next theme, the take-home theme, is anti-bias measures. I've already covered that. It's something that's completely on our mind all the time, is make sure we're getting the truest possible picture of what the seabed's made of. Now, the other thing I want to mention, and it's very important, is the idea of measuring the uncertainties within the database. So we do that by constantly carrying out different types of calibrations. And what we are going to highlight really is the performance of the word-based data in providing physical estimates versus the performance of the numerical analytical data producing the estimates for the same things on the same sample. So we can cross-calibrate those parameters where we have them together on the same sample. And this is a key to understanding uncertainties in the system, but also for detecting ragged data. So, so the idea of calibrating constantly as we go is totally important in dbSEABED. All right, so dbSEABED is research-oriented. It's academic, really. It's vendor-independent. And also, a thing that gives me great pleasure, for instance, today, is it's highly collaborative. I've worked with people from so many different countries, and I can help them, and they can help dbSEABED. So it's really a wonderful project that way. All right, well, let's get to the nuts and bolts. The inputs we seek are about sediment character or rock character. That's the physical properties, for instance, the porosities or the shear strengths. We're also looking for information on grain types, for instance, whether it's a bryozoan formed formation or whatever it's made of. And then, and I should emphasize this, we also take in information from the skeletal benthos and the mesoscale features like ripples or burrows or trails. Now, a key decision that we made was to include the biological coarse material like chunks of coral or shell debris, include those in the textural statistics. So if you see a map of the gravel from dbSEABED, it does include the biological things, even the living biological skeletons. I know this is a point of discussion, but the fact of the matter is that we really want to be a reliable source of information for sediment transport models and acoustic models and seabed strength models. So the biology is integral to those parameters in many parts of the seabed. So there are some things we don't deal with in dbSEABED, and we don't integrate bathymetry data. That's a different business. And I'll recommend CMAP 2030 for people who are interested in that. And also we do not bring in acoustic classifications, broad scale acoustic classifications from backscatter. And the thinking here is, it's not that we don't trust it that much, but dbSEABED is often used for ground truthing those studies, and we don't want to create a circularity. The only acoustic classification data that we do bring in relates to rock outcrops on the seabed, which of course are difficult to sample. So we really do want to have a handle on them. So we do bring in backscatter for rock. Now the yellow square there is to highlight the fact that it's a code, it's an audit code. So it tells us where the data came from that makes the values lower down. And the P means it's parsed, so it's word-based data. And the C means it's on-calculated, so there's an estimate. And so I just make the point that any output from dbSEABED is trackable backwards right to the original data source and the original data wording. So we do that with the database keys in the red box and helped with the audit code in the yellow box. Now, this set of parameters is what we call our top 20. These are the parameters that almost everybody wants almost all the time. Grain size, granular sorting, carbonate percent, is there vegetation present, organic carbon values. -99 is our null value. And so this format has been very stable over time. So people can just drag it into the GIS that they're used to using. All right, one more thing on this slide, and that is there are 3 data streams. I've already mentioned word-based data. So the analysis, the numerical data from things like the multi-sensor, they're treated independently from the word-based data until we get to the final merging of the data sets. And then the third stream is the on calculation, the estimation of values. So those 3 streams are processed similarly. There are intercalibrations between them, but they are only merged at the end. And the type of merging can be decided by the client. So some people want to emphasize the numerical data and other people want to emphasize the descriptive data. So that's a client choice. Okay. So more on the word-based data. You can see from these pictures that there are parts of the seabed are quite difficult to characterize using numerical analyses. You really do need a description of what's going on here. You know, the shapes, the dispositions, the fact that things are broken, the chimneys, you know, the pebbles, where the shells, the biota. So the word-based data carries a lot of information that is really not available from the numerical analyses. And that's why we say we love the word-based data. For the input data types, we do import a number of different topologies of data. So point data is the bulk of it. And if there are overlaid surveys in the same area, then the points from those surveys are just interspersed and they all contribute to the later gridding. So we can pile in, even in the same area, multiple surveys that have given a time averaged view of the conditions at the seabed in that area. We also do bring in polygon and raster data, but it's mainly for cases where there's been a mapping of the rock formations on the seabed. Okay, so how do we deal with the word-based data? And this is really a very distinctive feature of dbSEABED. We go to large data sets like the one from IOV that deals with the Baltic, the southwestern Baltic Sea sediments, a beautiful data set combining descriptions of the sediments with really first grade grain size analyses. And we can compare the results of those 2 streams on single specimens and do it statistically. So then we can work out what was meant when people called a sample gravelly sand, for instance. And we can look at the term and what does it mean in terms of phi, average grain size. So we sort of compiled 10,000 samples in the statistics, And for gravelly sand, we see the third orange curve centered at about 1.5 phi, going even out to minus 0.5 phi and then down to 4.5 phi. So there's a membership function for the term gravelly sand. And any one of the phi values that are spanned by it has a membership low on the wings and high in the middle. This is fuzzy set theory, and it was the way that we transferred the terms into sedimentological meanings. To get a final result on this, we can accept the peak value, the mode, as the central value that we're going to convey, and then we can attach the spread of the membership function as an uncertainty. So I won't go any more into that, but this is sort of the open window into the way that the word-based data was handled. And I have to say, since 1998, when the first paper was published on this, it has continued to be a really good performer in the system for many parameters and many situations. All right, so let's look at the dbSEABED Hub Ocean link. First of all, I'm going to look at the graphics on this page. And these are the parameters, the raster layers which are currently being delivered. So we have rock, exposed rock. We have hard versus soft substrate, which does not correspond exactly to rock. Gravel can be involved, gravel and boulders. We have organic carbon and carbonate. They're compositional. And we have the textural, which includes gravel fraction, sand fraction, mud fraction, and average grain size. We actually calculate a lot more parameters than that, not always with the same density of samples, but we do calculate them to get a preliminary idea. So let's look at one of these. Let's look at the hard-soft substrates, very relevant for many fisheries and ecology studies. It's not always the same parameter that people want. So, for instance, I'm working with some phycologists in Belgium, algae people, and they have a somewhat different definition of what hard substrates means. So we modified our formulas and we have a different parameter for them. The really interesting thing about this, obviously it's following the spreading ridges a lot, but the really interesting thing about this is if you just take the values where rock is reported by studies, you end up with a lot of the map interpolates to rock because there is no information on rock percent in the sedimentary basins. So one of the things we had to do was to go to our fundamental data set, all the cored sediment samples, and label them as zero rock. And we also got a number of separate data sets, for instance, the heat flow, the marine core heat flow data set with, I think, nearly 10,000 sites, and labeled them as not rock too. And so once you bring in the zero rock values, which aren't usually reported in survey results, once you bring in the zero rock values, then the rock areas become focused. And you end up with this pattern here, which seems to me to be very realistic. Now, this pattern of rock occurrence isn't just the spreading ridges. It's also the volcanic chains. It's the phosphate crust areas. It's the carbonate crust areas, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so it's really a very useful layer. Now, the text on the left-hand side tries to answer the question, how do we generate these worldwide raster mappings of the properties? There's a whole literature on how to interpolate spatial data like this. And we've investigated it. We've spent a long time doing it. And I have to say, my synthesis is that there's no happiness in this field. There's no satisfaction. There's no real final answer at all. So we actually pulled back from the more advanced techniques, and decided to go to something which is not black box, everybody understands it, but yet performs well and is really suitable for this situation. So we're dealing here with non-stationary spatial data, which if you take it seriously as you should, it discounts a whole lot of potential methods for interpolation. So the localized IDW, where we're doing that operation for every point, deals with that problem. And also the thing that really worried me in the past was with some techniques, you end up with a global spatial variability model that you then apply to all the individual cells. And that seemed to be unreasonable between the continental shelves and abyssal plains. So now we measure the spatial variability around every grid cell, and we use that for doing the interpolation and calculating the uncertainty statistics. So this is a very localized process running across the raster map. Okay, let me see. The distance metric that we use is XYZ. So it's latitude, longitude, and water depth, but it's fitted to a logistic function. And also the spatial coordinates are not latitude, longitude, of course, but a true distance measure. All right, so that performs really well, and we can see it performing really well around seamounts, difficult areas, seamounts, canyons, reefs. It really does what we think is a very good job there. I will say, however, we are still open to using other techniques. All right, so when people pick up a data set and choose to use it in their PhDs or their research programs, basically what they're doing is that they're nailing their careers and their progress and their reputations to the reliability of the data set that they're choosing. And so I'm very conscious of that, and I've helped many people over the years, and I'm very conscious that when they choose to use a data set like dbSEABED, they do want to know about the quality assurance side. Now, I won't go all the way through this slide here, but I'll just point out one illustration in it. You can read this yourselves later. When we're parsing the word descriptions, very often there are terms like sand, which have a meaning in one way, but are ambiguous or neutral in another way. So so sand does not convey any information about composition. We don't know whether it's terrigenous or carbonate. So that means that a description of sand in a description is ambiguous there and is actually an unknown so far as carbonate composition goes. So we track the unknowns, and if they reach more than 5 to 10% of the total of the description, then the description fails. And, you know, as sad as it is, we actually do have to fail a lot of samples. I think in the end, we probably fail about 15% of the information that comes to us. So take a look at this quality assurance side and ask any further questions if you'd like to. I mentioned a lot of calibration constantly. Here's a description which is partly historical for me. So the first time we started doing it was in Germany, and we got this very, very good result on their data sets for the Baltic Sea of a median average deviation between the numeric data and the word-based data of 3% on mud contents for the samples. So the Prof. Jan Haaf called this, when he first saw it, the wow diagram, and it's been confirmed by later work in that same area. All right, so let's have a look and see about data delivery and how people get dbSEABED data, how they can obtain it. One way it's been available for a while, and we'll be reposting this later today, is to browse the data using Google Earth. I'm just going to click here, and this is a bit of a video showing how to browse it. These squares are data bins. It looks like a raster, but it's actually a binning of the data. You can click on one of those bins, and then you can read a lot of detail about what's there and where the information came from. And you can click on any of those bins and obtain that information. So it's a good exploration tool. Okay. All right, so how to obtain the dbSEABED outputs? We have two levels of data, a public level and a by arrangement level. And the public level is limited to 0.1 degree, about 10 kilometers. This is not arbitrary. Over the years in compiling dbSEABED, we've run up against a couple of cases where a nation or a government was willing to contribute data, but they were sensitive about defense or giving away too much about the areas just offshore of their harbors. So at 0.1 degrees, we resolve those sensitivities. And that's why we've chosen that. But there are other things too that convinced us that we needed to keep the public level course. And that is the pirate fishing fleets, who at one stage were fishing for our data on where the rock reefs were in the deep sea and so on. So I think for the good of fisheries and so forth, the public data should be limited to the coarser. Now, 0.1 degree is still a really useful layer. And in fact, in some ways, given the sparsity of the actual samples around the seabed, it is the appropriate level to use because in many areas, samples are separated by 100 kilometers. However, we do understand, especially in detail mapped areas, that some people do want higher resolution grids, and so those people would need to come to us and make their case, and the data would be given on a per project basis. So we do have a 1 kilometer gridding of the entire world seabed materials. It takes a long time to compute. And we do have that, and we are very willing to make it available for projects that have that focus. The other thing that we're really interested in is hearing from people whether they want additional parameters or variations of parameters. So this for us is a bit of a research side. We're really interested to meet the needs of the communities. Okay, and metadata always goes with the data. Fine, so I do want to finish with some thank yous. The global seabed could not have been done without really deep and extensive collaboration. So I would like to mention particularly Thomas Wever in Germany, and Bob McConaughey in NOAA, Alaska, and so forth. And then I also want to give a shout out to Pangaea. The Pangaea database for the sediment properties is ingested into dbSEABED, and we regularly update that. We wrote software to do that job. Pangaea is mighty. So I'm deeply appreciative of the efforts that that group and their collaborators have made. It may be a surprise to you, but OBIS and Platzi also contain a lot of good seabed data. So I need to thank those communities as well. All right. Thanks, Gustav. That's my part.
Thank you so much, Chris, for that presentation. And again, if you have questions to Chris, post them in the chat, and we'll address what we have time for in a bit by the end of this webinar. Chris, you threw a question in we just did a webinar a few hours ago for the European audience, and you said something like, if you have innovative ideas how to use this data, I'd love to hear about it. Was that phrased right? So
exactly right.
yeah,
Yes.
and maybe you can even put those ideas in the chat, because we have a small poll in a bit, but that one isn't in there.
Yeah, I gave an example that I've been reading papers where concrete structures on the Florida shelf move around by kilometers, even in a single hurricane. And I think we need to get a better handle on these sorts of phenomena. But the sediment and rock characteristics and shapes are really important for setting a friction factor for modeling how these different objects will behave under events. So yeah, I'm really interested to help people tackle research problems at the ocean bottom.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'll go into the introduction just about Hub Ocean, and then we'll go a little demo, and then we'll come back to the questions. So we are a non-profit tech foundation based out of Norway, but operating globally. We are working to support marine science and to accelerate actions to improve ocean health. And we have also a sister organization called RevOcean that you might have heard about. They've built a really one-of-a-kind research vessel that's going to start being operational in 2027, as it looks now. And we are essentially originally born to be with their data platform as well. So that's something we're working hard on this year, to really take care of a large amount of ocean data from the latest and greatest sensors. In the middle of our work, we have built an ocean data platform which sits in the cloud on Azure, actually on European servers currently. It has the main components on the left. We have a big open data catalog, and I'll show you in a bit some of the items in there. We have worked hard to get fit for purpose data, and something we're growing all the time. I think dbSEABED is one heck of a good example and contribution to that catalog, and we're also working to bring many other data sets in. And it's also a catalog that's built on the latest technology to really have access to speed. So we've developed our own sort of storage controllers to be very efficient to work with large, for example, tabular data. And then there is all the users that come to the platform that sign up, which is free. You have your own data space as well, where you can upload your own data and you can share data with each other. And this also have access to the same API-based technology as the main catalog. And there's an option to also publish the data. Then on the other side, we have the interoperability piece, which is that the data, when it sits on the platform, can really be consumed in many different ways. It can be consumed directly on the platform and worked with. I will show that in a second. But also, it's a place where data can be streamed into websites and apps. They can be worked through our SDK, which have support for both Python and R. R was just added just this last sprint, actually. And then we have our own workspace that you will have access to. It's a Jupyter Lab environment. But you can also connect through an API key from other places like Google Colab or GitHub Codespaces. And there's integration to GIS. Okay, just quickly, some of the sort of user stories. We are quite passionate about sharing industry data at Hub Ocean. We do have sort of the Aker Industries, which sits close to us as well. So they've been supportive of our work, and one of the biggest data sharing we've done is a huge data set in our Antarctica from the fishing fleet, actually. And Chris, we should actually look into it someday for the seabed properties as well, because there's certainly seabed data in that data. It's split beam sonar data from 14 years, and there was some great science coming out this year, and we're going to do some additional stories on this. But this is the kind of data that you don't replicate easily from research missions, because it's every day, every season. Another example, a little bit higher up in the data value chain, is a survey company called TGS. They shared a number of their marine mammal observations in Brazil, and we took those Excel spreadsheets and helped make them into a more digestible format, and then we also passed it on to OBIS and GBIF. But now you can actually trace back to those Excel spreadsheets as well. So the platform has that sort of flexibility. We also have another example I like is, we do support any kind of sharing. So we have some research and marine biology station examples, for example, in Mozambique, and the Basiru Center for Scientific Studies are working with us now to see how their data can be also more accessible through the platform, where they can also play with these sort of sharing permissions and so on. And then I think what you saw today is an example of this kind of collaboration with data providers that we are supporting and working together with data providers to make more data available through the platform. Okay, so I will show you just quickly how to find data, explore data, create your own collections, upload data, and where you can do analysis and visualize things in GIS. There is a little getting started guide that you can maybe go back to when you digest this. So the QR code there on the right will get you to sort of a little getting started piece on our webpage. And then there on the left is the QR code and link. Perhaps Matthew, if you can put it in the chat as well, to the platform where you can create your sign up. But I will now show you that. So this is what meets you on the web. There's lots about us here. You can go to the About and FAQ frequently asked questions section if you want to know more about us, or see some of the stories here. If you go to the platform, actually I meant to be signed out. Let me do that. When you come to the platform, this is what greets you. We have the data catalog. It's open, but it only contains, and you can search for all the data here, but it only contains the metadata at this point. To actually access the data, you need to create the sign-in. So you can create an account. It's simply your email address, send a verification code, and your name and password. And let me get out of that. So we're signing in. I'm not going to use that. I'm going to use this one. Uh-oh. Okay, so now we're signed in. So now we have ability to export data. It's available in Parquet, CSV, and GeoJSON currently. But when you're at the data set, you can also start exploring the data itself. So up on the right, you have the ID of each data set. So that is quite handy for many things. We also have documentation how to connect to OGC features, which is a way to get it, for example, in QGIS, with those data that are suitable for that. Yeah, the level of metadata will depend a little bit on the source. We have included as much original metadata as possible while still keeping this fairly lightweight. But with each data set, you can also have a number of supporting files. This specific one doesn't. So here the data is aggregated. Sorry, this is actually a vector data from protected seas, which is global polygons of protected areas. And we have a little bit of statistics you can see here from each of the columns, and then you can go and explore the table. But let's go over and go back to dbSEABED instead. Okay, so let's search for sediments. For example, we have the data divided up in data sets and data collections. The atomic units is really the data sets and also the files that sits under those. But data collection can be a useful grouping. Not all data sits under collection, but many do. So for example, here we can go into the dbSEABED collection. This one was actually created a year ago, and we now have upgraded all the layers in this collaboration with Chris. You can now then go into the data you're interested in. Let's go and have a look at the hard and soft data. The platform just now started supporting creating DOI. So Chris, you're actually the first DOI we created on the platform. So that's quite nice. It'll take you back to this page. On this collection, it's mainly files. So we support both any files, but we also have then the specific support for vector data. And we're building a raster integration as well, but that is still in the making. What you can do already, you can go and you can do some preview. So here we can see, for example, pictures. We can read some of the supporting documents as well. This is some of the pieces that Chris has written about these data sets. And then you can download the actual geotiff. Now let's go back and I'll show you another piece, which is, and I think this one is really quite great. On the platform, we also now have the point locations of dbSEABED. So that is the locations with the associated metadata, but it doesn't actually have the geological data itself. So this is quite nice to see what the gaps are and understand the limitations and possibilities of the models. What you can see here in this sort of pre-made statistics already, you can see that here we have over 4 million rows. You can see that the texture data covers about 65% of the data set has information about texture and composition, 50%, and so on. And you can see a bit about the year and date. So now we can go over and we can check out the Explorer. So you can go and hit the Explore data set. Here you see the first 100 rows of this data. So we don't display all of those millions of geometries in here, but you can do a bunch of filtering. So let's say we would go to Norway, where Hub Ocean is based, and we'll make a little. Sorry, we can do a spatial filter and we make a little box. We could add filters along each and attribute column as well if we want to. But let's just keep it simple for now. So now you're accessing the data in this smaller area, and you can we're going to visualize it in a second. And it takes a little bit of time just because of the size of this data. While it's thinking, I'm going to show you another thing. So actually, we do have a little trick that's going to be doing for everyone. We also have something called vector tiling. So that means that the data is tiled, so you can have the whole data set displayed for really large geometries. This is quite challenging for some of the data. Some of them have millions and millions of geometries in them, but it's quite a nice way. So this is what we can do with that efficient controller as well. Let's see. Okay, so here we have the let's show 100 points. We have found 149 points, Chris, in this area. So then you can see those and you can click on them and you can export them. So that's quite nice for those who are not coders. Of course, we have all the abilities to filter and work with this data through the Python and R environment as well. Okay, so we also have the ability to upload your own data set. So I'll make a very quick demo because I see we're a little bit short on time. But you can create a new data collection. For example, and we can then add data sets to this collection. We can add collaborators as well, but I'll just go ahead and add a collection. Let's just do a demo. dataset. Something like that. And we previously actually got a nice little data set from Norwegian Geological Survey. You can choose to ingest it as CSV files as long as you format it with geometries and with a WKT format. And then you can also get GeoJSON or Parquet. The Parquet is fast, so I'll use that one. Because this data has geometries in it, you can upload it as a table. When it sits as a table, we have the ability to explore it the way I just showed you. You can, of course, add metadata and all of this. You can edit the table and add information. We can now see this data, and we can do a little filtering of the Oslo fjord and see if there was something more for Chris to do. And I think that let's apply those filters. And you have another almost 250 sites to work with there in the Oslo fjord, Chris. I'm looking forward to see that. Okay, so a data set, one important feature here is that you can then collaborate on this data. So you can make a public link available, but you can also work, and I could set Chris as an editor. He has to be signed in on the platform, and then he can edit the data, or he can be an admin, or just a viewer. When you have edit rights, we can collaborate on that table. We can add rows, we can add columns, and there's an audit log. And then when we're happy with the result, we can also request to publish it on the platform, which means that we would just check that there's nothing wrong with the legal side of the data, there's license and so on. And then we hit publish on the catalog. Quickly, I just want to show you some visual sides too. So if you click the workspaces, there's a documentation, by the way, of course, for all the more advanced features. Please go and check that out. And then if you click on the workspaces, you can open our Jupyter environment. So this has essentially Python and R, but also an interesting, I think, new JS tool that sits online. Here, it's still sort of a beta version. It's still being quite developed, but it's based on QJS. When you're using that on the platform, you can actually make quite nice visualizations directly here as well. So you can run Python or R code. Here we made an example that's on the webinar from last week, where we took a lot of coral maps in the West Indian Ocean, and we used the compute tools on the server side to do aggregations, and we made some nice best available maps in hexagon format. Anyway, so I'm not going to go through that today, but it's quite nice ability then to both run code. You can have the compute happen on the server side without having to actually download, for example, the 40 million geometries in Alan Coral Atlas, and then you can get the results you need. And then last thing I'll show, I need to hit the sharing. Let me do this. Just want to show you what it looks in QGIS as well. So this is the dbSEABED rasters. They're quite easy to download. They're about 25 megabytes geotiffs. I believe we have also the layer files if you want to color it the way we have done it. But here you can also use our OGC features. You connect with the API key you can generate on your user account, and we can actually show the dbSEABED locations on the map here as well. And then you can add other data like, for example, seamounts. We have a couple of seamount data sets on the platform, and they are available here. You can add that protected seas data with your marine protected areas and so on. Of course, streaming always have their limitations, so some data may or may not be suited to bring in this way. But it's something that works quite nicely for many data on the platform. I think that's all I had for the demo. I know we will have lots of questions. I'm gonna put you through a short poll before we address those, and I'm gonna try to be very quick with the poll. There are 4 questions for you, just to help us understand your needs a bit better. Maybe first, just a couple of 1 or 2 words on how you found this webinar. And these are active throughout the end of this session, this webinar, so you can come in and put something in a couple of minutes as well. But please put in a few words to describe how you found this webinar. And I will move on to the next question. Okay, we'll see what Jolly rocks. I think that sounds great. Okay, so the second one is, which part of the webinar was most relevant to you? So was it the presentation about how dbSEABED has been put together? Was it how you can access it on the Ocean Data platform and what you can do there in the catalog? Is it the ability to do this my data and work with your own data there, analysis through Python and R, visualizing in GIS, or share your own data on the platform? And it's a multi-select, so just click anything that sounds interesting. Okay, so I'll throw us into the next one. I don't know why we run out of time so quickly, Chris. I think we're too excited about what we do. Okay, so right, this one, dbSEABED global substrate maps. Which of the following applies to you? So how would you want to use these products? Are you happy to use the public 0.1 degree, 11 kilometer data set that Chris showed now? Do you need higher resolution maps? I'm sure you all need higher resolution maps, but it's interesting to see also how you find the usefulness of the public product. And then, do you need additional parameters than the ones we showed? Are you interested in contributing to the project with ideas or data, or are you primarily here to learn and explore? And I'll show you, the results are in the chat for everyone to see, and I will, for those who can stay for a few minutes, we'll go through them quickly as well. And then the final one, what kind of support would be most helpful for keep working with ODP? So we're already planning a diving deeper webinar series for 2026 to dive into some of these more technical modules with some more focus. There's the potential to do handheld training sessions and courses. If you are interested in courses for students or for yourselves, please reach out to us, and we're happy to come up with something that fits your needs. Online support, chats, forums, etc., documentation and examples, or you are pretty happy just finding your own way. And those are all my questions, and we haven't addressed any of yours yet. So thank you so much for the input that you're putting in already. Matthew, can you help us moderate a bit in the chat? I have not had a chance to read the questions. Or maybe Chris, if you see something you want to respond to, you can have a go.
Yeah, sure will.
I can. There's two questions from a little bit earlier on. I think maybe if you can you read them for yourselves, Chris, or shall I just read it out for you? Or what do you prefer?
It would be helpful if you could read them if they're short.
So from Larry Mayer, when describing the browsing mode in Google Earth, you described the selection as bins. Were these individual sample points, or do they represent some sort of interpolation of many data points over a small area? So that was when you were showing the
Yes.
Google Earth view of the
data. Each bin contains only the data inside the bin outline. So there's no interpolation or extrapolation. They're simply buckets of data. For many of them, there will only be one sample in there, so that will be the characteristic that's plotted. For some of them, there might be 100 samples in them, but that's where there's been intensive sampling. So there's no interpolation. It's not an interpolated raster. It's just spatial binning.
Thanks. I think that's answered the question
that
as well.
Mm-hmm.
Unless, I'm not sure if Larry's still on the call, but you can chime in if that's not doesn't satisfy. The other answer, another question from Syed Khalil.
Oh yeah,
I think
I
you're still on the
Syed.
call.
Yeah.
I mean, you can say yourself if you want, but he's asking about the confidence level of sediment distribution in the Gulf of Mexico, stroke America, especially along the Mississippi River Delta, as he says, where there's different sediment types and there's chaotic distribution and hurricanes and other things. So I guess the confidence level in that area.
Yeah. Well, there are many factors there. The confidence has two levels. There's the confidence within the data, right? That a result that you calculate by gridding is correct. So a raster cell may not have data in it, but you've got an uncertainty on its prediction, right? But then there are extraneous uncertainty factors too, like has the area since been disturbed by a hurricane or by shipping or something like that? So Sayed, uncertainty is an order of magnitude more work than dealing with the actual values of the mapping. It requires a lot of thinking. And at the moment, the uncertainty we're producing is the uncertainty within the data set, right? And so, for instance, if an area is extremely diverse, right? If there is a diversity of results in one grid cell, then obviously the uncertainty goes up relative to you going there and resampling, right? So yeah, our uncertainties are limited to within the data set. That's all we can compute. For order of magnitude, we're finding that for popular parameters like percent mud, many areas are giving a 1 sigma uncertainty of 10% or so, but often it gets up to 20. So this is environmental data. It's got its natural uncertainties. But for many areas like the Gulf of Mexico, we're ending up with a 1 sigma value on grid cells of about 10 to 20%.
Wonderful. Those were the two specific questions, I think, to answer, really. I remember from the previous session, we had a similar thing. We in the polls, we have a pretty equal split between people saying that they'd be happy to use the public 0.1 degree grids and a few equally saying that they would prefer to use the higher resolution map. So maybe just as last time, we could just reiterate the two methods of that. I mean, how you would recommend the people who have a need for higher resolutions or have some other purposes might contact you and go through that.
Yeah, so there are a number of data aggregators around now that are trying to create a whole catalog of parameter values at a set raster resolution. And so sometimes it's a 1/12 of a degree, sometimes it's a 1/10 of a degree. So the machine learning has really spurred these efforts along. That order of magnitude seems to me to be about right, given the spacing of our samples. At the moment, we're doing RMSE tests on how the interpolation RMSEs respond to interpolating at different resolutions. And the preliminary results, which may be not surprising, say the RMSE actually rises a lot when you go to a finer resolution interpolation off data which already has wide separation. So, you know, we need to look at this. In some areas, the high resolution data is great and appropriate. In areas like the North Sea or the German EEZ, you know, there's so much sampling, it will support that 1 kilometer resolution. So it's a matter of support, really.
Great. I think we've reached our time, Chris. So if there are any final questions, you know, we can stay a few more minutes and address them. Otherwise, well, I have to thank you,
Follow
Chris.
up by emails. People were
Follow
very
up.
welcome to email Gustav or me after the session or going into the future.
Very much so. So we look forward to keep hearing from you, and thanks for the input you gave and the good questions today. And thank you so much, Chris, for joining us on this second webinar today.
Yes, my pleasure. Very good.
And hopefully we'll get these maps to lots of good uses now. So looking forward to see where they go next.
Yeah, that's why we built dbSEABED, to have it used.
Great.
All right.
Good to see everyone. Thank you.